Thanks for having me. My name is Tyler Rourke. I'm also a candidate for Everett City Council, running against my opponent here, obviously. Happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion, and hopefully I can answer some questions. And yeah, don't make this too easy for me. Have something tough. Thank you.
Okay, so let's just dive into the questions and we can alternate who goes first.
Sure.
Is that good? Okay.
Yes.
First question, what do you think can be done by the city to create more affordable housing? So, who wants to go first on this? Should I flip a coin?
Oh gosh, I don't have any points.
Yeah, I mean,
Tyler, would you like to go?
sure. So, affordable housing, it's complicated. Of course, everything is complicated. I think, you know, when we talk about affordable housing, we need to look at all levels of housing, and that is, you know, from the very lowest, homelessness, just above homelessness, you know, low income, middle class, everywhere, all throughout. And I think affordable housing is really complicated because we're in the shadow of Seattle. And Seattle has had a major housing shortage with its growth. So a lot of people have been priced out of Seattle. Part of that has to do with jobs. Part of it has to do with, you know, Seattle hasn't didn't start building as densely as it should have early enough. So basically, if somebody wants to move to Seattle because they have a job, they need to buy a house, the person with the most money gets the house that's for sale. And a lot of times those houses have been old, you know, Ballard neighborhoods, single story, you know, brick homes, similar to what we have throughout Everett. And the wealthiest person gets it. And so they don't want to live in that house, and they scrape it off and they build the biggest single family residence that they can on this lot, and that happens throughout the city. And all of a sudden, the entire city is filled with luxury housing. And so where does everybody else go? Well, they can't afford to live in Seattle anymore. So Everett has had to absorb a lot of that. I think people are commuting farther than ever. And this is really complicated. I think what the city can do to alleviate similar problems that are sort of bleed over from Seattle are a number of things. And they involve reducing some regulations to make it easier for infill development so that developers can make a profit. They have to make a profit just like everybody else in building density within our city limits. So in some cases, single family neighborhoods, I think, need to become duplexes and triplexes and quadruplexes. And I think a lot of that can be done tastefully. The way that the front of a duplex or a triplex is built can have a major impact on how that affects the street. I think we can have a lot of density without significantly or instantly impacting the feel of a neighborhood. I think a lot of people kind of fear density, but realistically that's required. Another thing that the city can do, let's see, we need to probably take a look at some of the regulations. We need to change some of the zoning to allow some of this infill development to accommodate some of this growth. And I think we need to embrace the fact that something happens called filtering. So it may look like in certain communities only luxury housing is being built, but what's happening is, you know, in the right environment, that building, along with lower income housing, allows people to upgrade. So I'm not ready to upgrade, I don't have the income for it, but for example, my family of 4 lives in a single story home with 1 bathroom and 2 bedrooms, and you know, it's starting to feel a little tight. And if I could afford it, and if there was a house available nearby, we might consider moving into a larger house, and that would free up more of a starter home for somebody at a lower income level. So, you know, we don't need to just build low income housing. We need to build all the housing so that people can kind of reshuffle as they can best fit.
Okay, Liz?
Well, a prosperous Everett depends on the affordable and diverse mix of homes in all communities, and I think that's a lot of what Tyler just said. We want to leave a legacy for our children and the next generation to have all the input they need to develop and support the growth of business, because we want a stronger, better, and more compassionate workforce. And part of being able to have those things is being able to address the issue of housing. We want to start addressing those issues with folks who are most vulnerable. And I have been reading a lot from USICH, which is something that I can't remember all of the words to right now, but Housing First. I don't know if any of you have heard of it, but I have. And housing is no longer the reward for going to school and getting a good job. You know, we have gone to school, we've gotten good jobs, we've been priced out of jobs. How do you do that? I don't know, but it's happening. And in order to have a prosperous Everett, we need housing stability. That if you are homed, if you're in a decent place to live, your stress is reduced, you will have increased school attendance, improved performance, and you will be able to get that job or get that, yes, that job, that technical area, and have a long-term sustainable, long-term economic stability. And we start that with our most vulnerable. So there, I think you were also speaking of gradation. You know, there's homelessness, then if we're talking about like folks addicted to drugs or getting domestic violence situations, you know, having a reception stage, and then shared housing where you're trained to get into, actually trained to be able to rent a home. You know, a lot of us think, what? How do you don't need that, but our most vulnerable, you get kicked out of a house, and then where do you go? You know, you're evicted, you've got the 7 years. Regular dwelling with time-limited occupation agreement based on special conditions. And then finally, you've gotten to a regular self-contained dwelling that you can be in. So yeah, nearly every door I knock on has something to say about the housing crisis, because it is a crisis. We've come to the point all over our country where a decent place to live is harder to attain for an increasing amount of people. And there are many sustainable goals, not initiatives, ideas and actual points to make that happen and make Everett a prosperous city for all of us, whether you're homeless or have the 5-car garage. We can do this together.
Okay. What do you guys think about having 2-minute or 3-minute answers?
I think that's a great idea.
What do you want, 2 or 3?
I don't know how much time we have, so 2. What do you think?
And I'm gonna, is that okay, Tyler?
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna skip around on the topics a little bit just so we make sure we cover some facets, because I think we can talk about housing all that.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one is community engagement. What is your vision for engaging community to have a voice in decisions that are made at the city council level? And how important is it that candidates be involved with neighborhood associations? So Liz starts first, and I'm gonna say go.
My vision is nothing without the people. In order to engage with our people, we need to go to them. We need to go to them. You all came here, thank you. It's hard to get people to where you want them to be, so you have to go to them. Communicate clearly and openly with our neighbors. I want to hold town hall type meetings in the areas that are feeling affected. For instance, up in, oh my goodness.
Delta?
Yeah, thank you. Over there in the Delta neighborhood, they're having some issues with Baker Heights and how, you know, they're having issues. So we need to go into their neighborhood and talk to them, like at their neighborhood meetings. It's vital for a community to be engaged with the community associations, not just the 19 neighborhood associations, but Coffee Moms down the street, YWCA, victim support services. You know, there are bunches of groups out there, and that is how we are going to create a prosperous, sustainable Everett. So yes, we need to go to the people. Not everybody can make it to a 6:30 council meeting on Wednesday or 12:30 on the 4th Wednesday, but there are ways of engaging, and I know the mayor is doing some things to improve that, and with me on the council, there will be even more improvement in that area. Thank you.
Good. Tyler.
My vision for engaging the community is, well, it's kind of like what Liz said. I need to be out there. I think we have big culture-wide problems. I think some of those problems are screens. We're battling screens and, you know, infotainment and entertainment and phones, and people are on Facebook, and there's not a lot of personal interaction. There's not a lot of actual face-to-face, you know, shared space and activity. And I think Everett needs to change its perception of itself change its perception within the region. I think we need to change what we're known for, and that has to be done just through work and people getting involved. And so I think as a city council person, not being a superhero and just like a regular human being, the most that I'm going to be able to do is to be vocal about that and to encourage people. You know, the city council is made up of 7 individuals, and the fact of the matter is people need to get involved, and people need to want to get involved. And I'm hopeful that by hearing that from elected officials, that will be one step, but they need to hear it from their neighbors too. I mean, they need to hear it from all of you. You are involved, you're here, so you need to go back home and, you know, get more people to turn out to this meeting. It can't all fall on the shoulders of the 7 elected city council members. And, you know, I certainly feel that way in my own neighborhood. I talk to my own neighbors and I kind of try to tell them what I'm thinking about, and what's going on, and what I'm seeing in the community, and I try to chip away at them. And people at work, I try to, you know, I don't want to be a pest, I don't want to turn people away, but it's constant. I'm constantly trying to get people to engage in one thing or another. And a lot of times I feel like I'm not making any progress, but as I look back over time, I do find that I'm starting to slowly change minds and get people interested, and, you know, even running for city council is getting people interested, so more of that.
Thank you. Okay, next topic, gangs, and Tyler will go first. The city just released their plan to address gangs. Do you think this is the right approach, or are they missing something?
I do think it's the right approach. I'm not an expert. I have no background in policing or gang task forces, but I think, again, going back to community and face-to-face engagement, something that we're lacking sorely in our culture is mentorship. And I know that one of the things that has been put in place by the gang task force is a mentorship program. That's huge. I mean, that's huge in every way. I think that what some of our nonprofits are doing with the Big Brothers Big Sisters, and, you know, even Cocoon House, and all these nonprofits in town that focus on that, showing young people, you know, what's behind the curtain that they don't even know exists, and showing them a path to something better than what they've grown up in is absolutely crucial. And with income inequality in our society, and our ability to self-segregate and move to nicer neighborhoods as we can afford them, you know, we're leaving a lot of kids behind, and I think we see that here in Everett. So yeah, I think the pivot and the pay programs involving the families and involving mentors in kids' lives is absolutely crucial in battling gangs.
Okay. Liz?
I was just on a ride-along recently with law enforcement in this neighborhood, actually, and it was eye-opening. I've been on a ride before, and it's all about community involvement, community engagement. I think the pivot and the, not pilot, I got the pay, is an important way to bring our folks together. The officer got a call from somebody who's in one of those programs, and, you know, the mom was like, she won't come home, but it's against what our agreement is, and the law enforcement officer was able to call the girl and be like, hey, you know, unless you want to get dinged on your court thing, you know, you should really go home, you know. And he'd had this discussion with her before. He knows the family. We saw another gal who her family wouldn't let her come home because she was on drugs and not doing quite well, but, you know, she was out in the street, but the police officers knew her. And although she had to go in involuntarily, it was a calm situation, and it was, you know, it was community. She didn't want to get arrested. So yes, they're on the right track. They are continuing to get better. Chief is putting his law enforcement officers out on the street and out of the cars. You know, they get out, they walk along Broadway, they walk along another area, I can't remember right now, maybe it's Casino, and, you know, see people. And they're not out just to find them doing wrong things. They're out to say, hey, I'm a person and a police officer. Let's, you know, and so, yeah, getting people with passionate folks that are encouraging is the way to get anyone out of any mess.
Okay. I'm going to skip over to education, and then I think we'll use the rest of our time for this other question. Okay, for education, what role do you think the city has in supporting family engagement in education, particularly when the city has different school districts and its boundaries? So, Liz first.
Okay, I'll move with that. It's all imperative. We all need to work together. We have so many silos. There's the PUD, there's the port, there's the city, there's the school districts, there's transit. You know, they're all these separate entities, and sometimes we work together. There's 2 school districts, there's 2 garbage collection businesses in the city of Everett. But figuring out ways to utilize each other's, you know, knowledge. We don't have any we don't have any school board members here tonight, do we? Sometimes we do. I know that Everett is having luncheons with, you know, the Everett School District is having luncheons with some of the parents. It's vital. We need to know what's going on. I have school-aged children. They're in the Mukilteo School District. They don't actually go to the schools, but I'm still involved with Explore because it's right next door to my house, basically. That's Explore Middle School. And I'm going to their engagement parties, I don't know what else you'd call them, community gatherings, and really listening. And I've seen Jen, you know, at quite a few civic events and schooling events, and spoken with the school board, Mukilteo School Board. I need to get more involved with the Everett, but it's crucial. Did I answer that? It's crucial. We need to do it, and it's important.
Tyler?
Yeah, of course I think it's really important. I think it's kind of unfortunate that the Everett School District is called the Everett School District and the Mukilteo School District is called the Mukilteo School District, because they could be called anything. I mean, the fact is that they occupy a space on a map, and the map has boundaries. I think to most people those boundaries should be transparent. And so if there's a school within the city limits of Everett, and Everett has a program, which the city should, to engage families in school activities, it shouldn't matter what school district the school is in. I think there are resource officers from the Everett Police Department at Mukilteo School District schools that are in the city limits of Everett. I could be wrong about that, but that's good. I mean, that's not necessarily family engagement, but it's certainly community engagement. And so, yeah, I think those boundaries should be transparent. And, you know, speaking of boundaries, I feel like 1/12 is an interesting boundary for the city because parts of it are in Everett, and as you go along it east-west, parts of it are in Snohomish County. And I've seen graffiti on a side street north of 1/12, and I've called to report it and been referred to the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office. And the Sheriff's Department covers a huge part of the county, you know, and this is one little pocket that's kind of in the Everett area, and I'm sure that it's not a high priority for them. And so I don't want to see similar things happen with schools that are in Everett. And I know Mariner is right outside the city limits and it's part of the Mukilteo School District, but you know, anything we can do to make that not matter in terms of family engagement is really important. So.
Can I add one little thing?
Ask Tyler.
Can I add one little thing?
Sure.
There's Everett SRO at Explorer, so resource officer. There's the sheriff resource officer at Mariner. Mm-hmm. It's those silo things again, and the border things again. And yes, there's a little dip at 1/12, which is, but I think, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, I do think that Sheriff's Department and Everett Police are working together, like on some of the gang issues and stuff.
Yeah.
So there are some partnerships there. So
and like 99 and go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do this last kind of open-ended question, and I'll give each of you 5 minutes, and then if there's other issues on here that you guys want to address, you can write them up and we can put them on Facebook, share them there. So that's a good way to get more questions answered. Okay, so Tyler will go first, and if elected, what are your top issues you want to address, and what action will you take? So 5 minutes, go.
Top issues for Everett, I feel like livability is really the word that best describes Everett's biggest problem. You know, I think within the region, the Puget Sound region, we have a negative connotation, and that needs to be changed. Part of that is PR, marketing, and maybe rebranding, and some concerted effort there. And I think part of it has got to be internal. I think Everett needs to do some work on its priorities. You know, as a community, we really need to start coming together and pushing a little harder to spruce this place up, make it more livable. I think as I've been going door to door campaigning, I have this list of people who vote, and you know, just to kind of generalize, a lot of the ages are printed on the list of voters, and a lot of those are pretty high. And so, you know, I kind of think to myself, like, who's going to be here next time I come around if I run again, you know, in a year or 5 years or whatever? And how is Everett's demographic going to change? Are some of these older people going to be able to stay in their homes? Who's going to be living in the neighborhoods? What are the new demographics going to look like? And who are we trying to attract? I feel like we need to consciously try to attract healthy people if we want to live in a healthy community. You know, we need to attract positive and engaged and happy and hardworking, and you know, we need some of those people to choose Everett first. We can't have them all go to Mill Creek, because Mill Creek has enough, you know, people with great jobs who are engaged. And so I want to see Everett kind of, you know, step up and become a more fun place to live, a healthier, happier place to live. I think that once we do that, we're going to see economic development. Businesses want to locate where people want to live, and Everett has all of the right things in place to be just a wonderful place. It already is. I'm committed to it. I love this place. Geographically, on the you know, it's got the different regions. South Everett has its own feel. North Everett, it's different neighborhoods. We got the water. We got an airport. We've got trains. We've got, you know, access to the freeway. We can go east to the mountains. It's just awesome. So we're really kind of perched on a precipice. Making Everett a livable place is going to drive economic development. And as we grow, and we try to do it incrementally and in the right way, we need to keep track of Everett's roots and history and not change too much, not lose ourselves. Seattle has become a city that I don't even recognize. I was born there, and everybody I talk to says, don't let us become like Seattle. And so we need to be conscious of that as we grow too.
Okay. You still have a couple minutes, 2 minutes and 9 seconds.
More.
Whoa.
Okay.
Lord.
So the environment is something that I really care about. And Pam, thanks for coming and talking about the plastic bag ban. In the grand scheme of things, I kind of agree. It's something that we can do. And it's not going to make a huge difference overall in the number of barrels of oil coming out of the earth. But I like to think of oil in terms of, I think you said it was 1 million years old. Most of the oil, I think, my understanding is it came from the Jurassic period, which was 165 to 140 million years ago. Some like 65 billion sunrises, and all of that energy is solar energy. So it was phytoplankton in the oceans taking solar energy and linking carbon and hydrogen together. They had to put that solar energy into the equation to get those things bonded, and that created the hydrocarbons. Some of that filtered down and coalesced in the earth and became oil. And so, you know, I think about how long it took. And if you were to scale out and look at the time period, in the last 100 years, we would not be an explosion of burning this oil. We would be an absolute detonation. I mean, we have just, you know, we found a way to really efficiently suck up as much as we can and just explode, you know. And so, you know, that's why I ride a bike. I want to see Everett become a more environmentally friendly place. I'd like to see it be a place where it's safer to walk. I'd like to see sidewalks. I'd like to see bike lanes. I'd like to see people out, kids playing ball and riding bikes safely, lower speed limits in the neighborhoods. Like, we've got to get out and away from our screens and get some fresh air and start acting like a community again. So that is a top priority for me.
Okay, 18 seconds.
Thank you. I forgot my cards tonight because I left in a hurry this morning. My son was running late for school. I dropped him off and I came straight from work. So you'll have to write this down.
Take a picture.
Or I'll write it down for you. www.votefortyler.org. And all my contact info is there.
Okay. Liz, go.
3 top priorities and what am I going to do? Housing first, that's huge. It's where I started this campaign. I've learned a lot more about it. I've always known that it is necessary, but now I have some real knowledge behind those words and knowledge that I want to share with the council and the city. A balanced budget, I mean, that's the law. We need to have a balanced budget, but how do we do that? I've been following along very closely. I think that what I would like to do is get even more creative than we already are and make sure that we are not passing on regressive taxes or regressive fees, which means that the people already paying a bigger chunk of their income towards those taxes are going to be getting more taxed. That wasn't a very good sentence, but you might have understood what I was saying. So a balanced budget, making sure that the services that we already have aren't going away. And we do want to be a prosperous Everett. We do want to be a livable, wonderful place that we can call home. There are a lot of people that are like, I am getting out because I don't like it. I'm like, man, tell me why. And I've gotten some really great and interesting answers, and sometimes it is because, you know, they're getting priced out. So starting with housing first, we will not negate, but get away all of those monetary issues in the budget, you know, that we're spending on services right now could actually move into a housing area so that there's not as many people doing drugs. More kids are in school. More kids and adults are getting those good jobs. You know, we start with housing. And it's not all low-income housing. Housing so that people can be comfortable and not stress-free. We're always going to have some stress. Housing budget and community building. I think that is the crux of everything that we do. Linda and I started this organization from the ground up. It's getting there. We've had some really great